Welcome, everyone. Again, my name is Natalia Sineaeva, and I'm a member of a Never Again association. And I will be a moderator of our special session today. My colleague, Dr. Sanjoy Barua from Bangkok, Thailand, will be a chat moderator. This session is dedicated to the Holocaust Memorial Day, the day of global significance, the day of commemoration of Jewish and Roma victims of a genocide committed by Nazi Germany and its collaborators during the Second World War. The day of liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau, the largest Nazi concentration and death camp 76 years ago. It is also an opportunity for us to start to inaugurate our project, Identifying and Countering Holocaust Distortions, Lessons for Southeast Asia. And we are very happy to organize this event, the first event today, in cooperation with our members and our partners in the region of Southeast Asia. Our project was supported by the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, which unites governments and experts to strengthen, advance, and promote Holocaust education, research, and remembrance, and to uphold the commitments of the Stockholm Declaration. Today, our program is the following. We will have 5 presentations. We have 5 speakers representing different countries: Australia, Thailand, Cambodia, Myanmar, and then we will have also, after 5 presentations, we will have a Q&A session, and when you can share your reflection, you can share your feelings, you can ask questions, and please remember that you can also post your questions, your comments in chat, or share privately with our chat moderator. Before our first presentation, I would like to ask for a moment of silence in commemoration of victims of the Holocaust, in commemoration of victims of genocide in Southeast Asia and all over the world, and also in commemoration of our colleague and friend of Never Again, the founder of the International Network Against Cyber Hate, Ronald Isons, who passed away 2 days ago, and he contributed greatly to fight against Holocaust distortion, against anti-Semitism, against racism. Let's have a moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. So now I would like to introduce our first speaker, and these are all our speakers today from 5 different countries with different backgrounds. I would like to introduce our first speaker today, Jeremy Jones from Australia, and he is the Director of International and of Community Affairs for the Australia Jewish and Jewish Affairs Council, a honorary life member and former president of the Executive Council of Australian Jewry, and a human rights advocate who has lectured and participated in high-level conferences on human rights in more than 30 countries, represented the Australian government and the World Jewish Congress, and chairs formal interfaith dialogues in Australia, while participating in international interfaith activity as a member of the International Jewish Committee for Interreligious Consultations. And he was the 2007 winner of the Australian Human Rights Medal, among other awards. I would like to invite Jeremy Jones to share his presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you. I shouldn't be here today. None of us should be here. We are discussing something which never should have happened. Something which never should have been allowed to happen. But it did happen. And we are here. And we need to be here. Today, 27th January, is the date the United Nations has nominated for memorializing of those. It is a date to think about, to reflect upon, and to address the issues of how the Holocaust happened, how it was allowed to happen, what forces were there which allowed for genocide. I want to address you today as a Jewish person. And I thought when we had the moment of silence for our wonderful, dearly lamented colleague, Ronald Isons, we had a minute's silence. If we were to have a minute's silence for all the people, the individuals, the personalities, the Jewish personalities murdered by the Nazis, we would have 11 years of silence. And that is how some people responded to the Nazi Holocaust. They couldn't talk. They couldn't share. But I feel we have a duty to share. Now, I said I'm Jewish, which means if the Nazis had their way, I would never have been allowed to be born. Not even living in the continent of Europe, live with a death sentence that the Nazis showed they were quite willing to execute whenever given the power. I live in Australia, with the first of my family arriving from Manchester, England, having been born in Poland years before, arriving in Australia in 1858. In 2008, we had a family reunion, and there were hundreds, close to 800 people at the reunion, being in Australia 150 years. Yeah. Had two brothers. One moved to Germany, one stayed in Poland. They were there under Nazism. The descendants of the brother in Germany, you could count on the fingers of both hands, or maybe just beyond, compared to the hundreds in the room. The brother who remained in Poland, who stayed in Poland, 0. And what can we say? We can say that the intention was to obliterate not just one generation, but to prevent other generations. Now, I think the Jewish people living in Europe at the time of Nazism, were any of them a threat? Were they a challenge? Were they occupying land somebody wanted? Was there competition for resources? There was none of that. Even if there had been, that is no excuse. But simply put, they were not. They were no threat. But they were able to be the victims of a genocide. There was enough to say, enough in history, enough in culture, enough in society for a political movement which pledged to kill, which pledged to destroy, to be able to gain power. I look at my children, they had great-grandparents who were adults in Poland at the time of the Holocaust. You wonder, was a businessman and his domestic duty wife a threat? Were their children, the children such as my children's grandfather, any threat? Were they a problem? Were they competing? Or were they a victim simply of the crazed ideology of racism and Nazism? Racism sourced in lies about other people, in hate against other people. We were very lucky. The older generation, one of them found a safe haven in the factory of Oskar Schindler. The other, the wife, was on the run, protecting 6 children, 3 of her own and 3 others, in danger every single moment, simply because they were born Jewish. And we look at racism. in this case, I'm talking about one specific sort of racism and one genocide. But all of us know that racism is a problem which goes well beyond a single type of perpetrator or a single type of target. And why is it? Now, in the last few days, there have been many discussions, including from the Secretary General of the United Nations, about fake news, about lies. And yes, it's true. There's no question racism is premised in lies. Yes, it's true that the stereotypes, let alone the conspiracy theories or the hatred, is often sourced in dishonesty and lies and in a lack of any possibility even of there being truth. But that seems to be irrelevant. Also, one thing we saw is one other problem we had is when we're discussing this issue is why was there a lack of resistance? Why was there not a response? What happened to the rest of the population? And the answer goes with a question relating to perpetrators. The perpetrators believed there was going to be a lack of consequences for their actions. Those around believed there would be consequences if they stood up and did the moral and the right thing. Very important, you see, people know that something wrong is taking place and feel there are more consequences for doing the right thing than there are for doing the wrong thing. And of consequences, an issue of people who could have done the right thing but did not because they had fear. And we look today at some of the problems which relate to Holocaust and Holocaust education. We find people who will justify genocide, who would justify racism, who would justify the Holocaust, say, yes, this had a positive outcome for our community, for our society. We can't let that argument be given any traction or success. There's an issue of denial of people who will not admit there was a Nazi Holocaust. This is also a huge problem because not only does it excuse the perpetrators, but it destroys from us the possibility to learn from a terrible situation so that we can do better. People still have the same rationale as those who committed the Holocaust. We still have people who will say this group of people do not belong within the family of humanity, and it is justifiable to persecute, to discriminate, and even go to the extent of genocide. Now, I don't want to speak for much longer because I know that there are others here tonight, and I'm only really introducing the subject. But it was very interesting when the UN Secretary General earlier this week was talking about two pandemics, a pandemic of the coronavirus and a pandemic of racism. And he said, there is no vaccine for anti-Semitism and xenophobia, and our best weapon remains the truth. Now, I would question that because in my experience, when you tell the truth to somebody who is dedicated to telling a lie, they're not interested. You need something much stronger. I believe there have to be consequences, and people have to fear the consequences for their possible participation in crimes against humanity, in crimes against racism, in discrimination. People have to be aware that if you do the wrong thing, there are consequences, and that requires societies to be able to learn the lessons of when you need as a community, as a society, to stand up and make sure that people who might be victimized are never in a template where it's a victim versus the persecutor and you are a bystander. It's against the perpetrator, of who is the perpetrator of the crime, regardless of who is the victim. Today, of all days, on the 27th of January, we have to think very clearly about what each of us can do to learn from the Nazi generation.
Thank you very much, Jeremy,
Thank
for
you.
your presentations, for your words, for sharing with us your family, your personal story. And of course, today we are going through very challenging times of a pandemic, but also the time when we can witness the growing racism, xenophobia, and numerous attempts of Holocaust distortion. So it's very important. It's very important to have solidarity and to be together, to share our commitment against racism, against anti-Semitism and Holocaust distortion. And we are very thankful for your presentation today, but also for your work. For your work against all this, against racism, against anti-Semitism and discrimination. Thank you very much for being with us. And if someone would like to share any comments, please post it also in chat or share with our moderator, Sanjoy Barua. And I would like now to introduce our second speaker, who is a good friend of our good friend and colleague with whom we have cooperated for the last some years, and whom we met during our stay in Bangkok. Venerable Lablu Balwa. He's a Buddhist monk, a spiritual teacher, and mindfulness mediation expert. He is also a PhD candidate in peace studies at Buddhist University in Ayutthaya, Thailand, and he's also an ambassador of the Institute of Economics and Peace. He's working with various organizations to promote inner and outer peace, and he's also engaged in interfaith dialogue and promote interfaith dialogue in the region of Southeast Asia and in his home country Bangladesh, and also beyond the region. In January 2019, on behalf of Never Again, Venerable Labruch promoted the World Jewish Congress We Remember campaign on the occasion of a Holocaust Remembrance Day in Thailand and Bangladesh, and also in India. He is also a consultant and teacher assistant on the subject of religion and culture at Sondraleten Gymnasium, Stockholm, Sweden. And I would like now to ask Lablu to share his thoughts and with us.
Hello. Yes. Please.
Yes, please, Lablu. I would like to invite you to talk.
Yeah. Good afternoons, good mornings, everyone, and blessings to everyone. I'm very honored to be invited to these special sessions dedicated to Holocaust commemorations. I learned about the Holocaust from the first times during my visits to the Poland and Europe 3 years ago. I'm a Buddhist monk since 2006. I am originally from Bangladesh, but I'm living in Thailand. I have learned about the genocide since my childhood. My home country, Bangladesh, experienced genocide by the Pakistani during the Liberation War in 1971. Many were murdered, lost their beloved ones, lost their colleagues and friends. It happened not so long away, but there are numerous attempts to be denied those atrocities. When I came to Poland, I learned that 3 million Polish Jews were murdered by the German Nazis, and 90% of all Jews in Poland at that time. I visited the memorials to Warsaw Ghetto uprisings. I learned about the Jewish resistances against the Nazis, including spiritual and religious resistances. I learned about the Jewish religious leaders, rabbis who spiritual support peoples during the Holocaust. I think religion should promote peace, tolerance, respect amongst people of different origins, ethnicity. Religions cannot be used politically. It should be united, but not divided peoples. Buddhism is a religion of peace, harmony, tolerance, and accepting other rights and freedom. I am personally promote the dialogues. I think religious leaders have power to bring peace in people's inner and outer peace in the world. And we have a respect to all the diversity and accept their rights. Thank you so much who are joining with me. Hello. Hello.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Venerable Lablu. We are very honored to have you here today. Thank you very much for all your support of our activities to promote dialogue and interfaith dialogue in the region. Thank you for being today and for your wise words. It's indeed very important because religious leaders have power to support this dialogue. The Diary of a Young Girl by Anna Frank, a Jewish girl who hid from Nazis in occupied Amsterdam until her family's hiding place was discovered and she was sent to her death in the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, is an important act of resistance against dehumanization by the Nazis, but also an example of human dignity and spirit in face of evil. Sayana Sir was a young girl when she translated the diary of Anna Frank into her native Khmer language. Born in Phnom Penh to parents of Javanese and Cham descendants, Sayana Sir grew up listening to her family's stories of the suffering inflicted on them and other Cambodians by the Khmer Rouge. She lost three of her grandparents and many other relatives during the Khmer Rouge regime. As a young girl in the early 90s, Sayana often spent the night covering in fear with her family in an underground shelter her father had dug beneath their home on the outskirts of the capital city. Sayana started working for the Documentation Center of Cambodia in 1997 as a volunteer, and she has compiled an extensive collection of poems, songs, and slogans of the Khmer Rouge. We met Sayana during our stay in Cambodia, when Never Again, in cooperation with its partner, Bell Foundation Cambodia, organized Holocaust seminars for Cambodian students and for Cambodian audiences. And it was the beginning of our cooperation. And I would like now to invite Sayana to contribute to our discussion. Sayana?
Hello?
Yes,
good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, greeting from Cambodia. So today I'm very honored and also very excited that it's my first time to join in the conference about the International Day of the Holocaust Remembrance. And so today I would like to share my point of view about the Anne Frank diary in Cambodia. First of all, I would like to give the background about Cambodia, also the small little background and experience of myself and my family. As Natalie have been introduced, I was born after the Khmer Rouge fall from after the liberation, and so I feel like I am the lucky child for I didn't born during this genocide. And I grew up listening and hearing my parents talking to their neighbor and talking to us, to the children, about the Khmer Rouge. But we saw that it is a fiction story that they created to scare us, to educate us to be obedient or to be aware, to go to the right way. However, when we grew up, still we have studied about the World War II in a history class in secondary school. And we once in a while we heard about the Jewish people and not really about the Holocaust. Similar to the situation, Cambodian nowadays has about 65% of the population are born at the age of below 30 years old. And so that means that they were born after the Khmer Rouge. And especially the genocide happened like 35 years after the Holocaust. Cambodian people, especially this, the majority of the population, like a teenage and also the youth nowadays, they still not really aware of the genocide that happened in Cambodia. And some of the older generation, they didn't really believe that their own people regarded their own people as the enemy. They did not believe that the atrocity happened in their own nation among their own people. Although there are some genocides against the Cham Muslim in the country that was raised by the ECC, the tribunal, the Khmer Rouge tribunal. So that at this time that the NGO that I work with have come up with the diary of Anne Frank. Have we come across this one? Because we think that this book, the diary, is one of the evidence, the perfect example, the sample of education to impose into the education system. Because the previous education or the school curriculum is more of the bias or more of the propaganda, and it's too much to believe. It makes us believe that it's not the true story. It's not really happened. So everything needs to have information to adjust, to analyze, so that we can balance and we can be critical to find the truth about what really happened. So in my point of view, the word to remember, it has have two elements in it. I think that to remember, it can be two ways. That one, you just remember for today, and you can be forgotten of the event, specific event. So in order to really remember and raise the concern, what to prevent it and not really not let it happen again in this part of the world or in any part of the world, is to remember it with action, with life history, and also with concern. That's why Anne Frank diary is a very useful, very helpful evidence and history to help introduce about what happened, about the atrocity. Because we ourselves as a Cambodian, we don't really believe, because we have no proof, no evidence at first to show and what to document to show the world, to show our own people of what really happened. No evidence, no proof. And so in order to have to adjust, to move on, for the survivor to move on, and so that the younger generation, they understand the feeling of the survivor, also the history of their own country. We first need the diary to play an important role to introduce to the youth and also to the general audience in the country. We have translated the book into Khmer language and distributed to the high school, mostly in the city, in Phnom Penh, and also in the provincial town. And we got some impact from the youth, especially, and from the library, from the other NGO, and those who work on the human rights and crimes against humanity, as well as the genocide. And that's why recently we don't forget to ignore. We don't ignore it because it was published like a decade, 2 decades already. We need it as a reminder to remember, but also as a reminder to raise the awareness again, so that the history is alive. And it's a way to have reconcile, as well as to as an educational tool, very useful educational tool, as a supplementary document, diary, and to show. And it's easy to make to introduce to the youth, because it's very it's a common story of everyone, of the teenage and the youth at that time during my age, is similar age. It's very easy. I mean, it's the perfect way to introduce this book to Cambodian, because the most of the population are teenage and also below 35, 30 years old nowadays. And that's why we don't want it to be forgotten. We keeping raising the concern. We keep taking action, keep on taking action. So that's just my really a message, that we want a good story to tell as well. We don't want it to happen again, so that our next generation, younger generation, our offspring have only bad story to tell. So we need to take action to prevent it, and use it as a way to as an information. When we get a lot of information from different parts of the world, we can have wider education, wider understanding, and especially to educate the youth nowadays, because teenage or youth are very easy drawn to violence, easy drawn to wrong, bad act, wrongdoing. So Anne Frank diary is really a very important example and a sample for Cambodia as well. So in the first line Holocaust history and evidence that introduced to Cambodia, that help Cambodia have find the way to accept themselves as well. So that's what I want to share. It's my last message, that is to remember with the action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sayana, for sharing your personal story, and also to be an inspiration for many Cambodian young people who can learn about the Holocaust, but also who can start thinking and reflect on their own history. So thank you so much. And I would like to remind everyone that you can share your comments in our chat box, or you can ask after. Also, if you have any questions or comments on Sayana presentations, we will have space after all presentations. So thank you. And now I would like to introduce and invite our next speaker. Who is also a very good friend and colleague of a Never Again Association. from Myanmar. From Myanmar, whom we met also in Bangkok during the launch of a report published by the Southeast Asian human rights NGO Fortify Rights about crimes against Rohingya. Nikki Diamond. Nikki Diamond is a human rights specialist to Fortify Rights in Myanmar, and he is a human rights defender and an academic. Nikki founded Youth for Social Change in Myanmar in 2007. In 2013, he received a scholarship from the government of Norway to help build institutions in Myanmar. Nikki is also a scholar on hate speech, non-traditional security, security discourse, socially constructed security, and genocide in Myanmar. Nikki presented his papers and presentations at various kinds of international academic conferences around the world. And currently he is interested in looking into the nexus issue between the systematic anti-Rohingya propaganda and the mass atrocity against Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar. So I would like to invite Nikki Diamond now to share his presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me to be a great panel at this International Day of Commemoration in memory of the victim of the Holocaust for South Asia on January 27 and 2021. I am Nikki with Fortify Rights in Myanmar. I am a human rights investigator and documenting human rights violation perpetrated by the state and non-state actor in Myanmar. So in this panel, I will be speaking on behalf of my experiences from Myanmar. I like to say the International Holocaust Remember Day is really important to the people of Myanmar because the government of Myanmar and the people should be ashamed of the atrocity crime perpetrated by the Myanmar military against the Rohingya Muslim in northern Rakhine State. Yeah, this is not about to be proud. This is to be regretful and lessons, particularly lesson learned to prevent human rights violation in the present and future. According to my experience in Myanmar, the failure to prevent past human rights violation perpetrated by the Myanmar military granted the strong impunity and the abuses continue. To prevent atrocity in future, we definitely need to remember what happened to the victims of genocide around the world. On the situation of Myanmar, the government of Myanmar admitted that what had happened to Rohingya Muslims in northern Rakhine during the military clearance operations in 2016 and 17 is the war crime and crime against humanity at the ICJ. However, the international human rights groups and the UN fact-finding mission have investigated the situation in Rakhine, the genocidal policy against Rohingya Muslims, and the intent to destroy the Rohingya community are exposed in all of their reports. But Myanmar is still denying the fact that no genocide against Rohingyas. This denial and failure to take reliable domestic action against the perpetrator delay the process of Rohingya repatriation. Meantime, Rohingya Muslims cannot go back to their motherland because Myanmar is not holding a reliable and meaningful justice and accountability measure against the perpetrators. In September 2020, New York Times and Fortify Rights put out a new release that 2 Myanmar army soldiers confessed to their involvement in massacre, rape, and other crime against Rohingya in northern Rakhine. And they provided the names and rank of 19 direct perpetrators from the Myanmar army. But I never hear any investigation led by the Myanmar government or the military. So I would like to conclude that denying and the failure to remember what happened to Rohingya Muslims in Myanmar will mostly endanger the other ethnic minority at the risk of genocide against them. In this regard, whenever we talk about atrocity crime in Myanmar, the military is the major perpetrator with impunity. In Myanmar, several civil society groups showed their solidarity with Rohingya community, which is really great. Which is really good indicated that they don't support the government and not tolerating the atrocious crime perpetrated by the military. Currently, what we need is international community and world leader like the United States. So under the Trump administration, I don't see any good and enough effort to take action against the Myanmar government and military. But this time, United States should take realistic and meaningful action against the perpetrator from the Myanmar military, so we can dream of the better future. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Nikki. Thank you for your input, and thank you for being so brave to talk about so difficult issues and also challenges and importance to work on this today. Thank you very much. And I would like to remind that we can also discuss and we can ask our speakers if you have any questions after all presentations. So and thank you once again. And now I would like to invite our last speaker today, Professor Rafal Pankowski. He is a professor at the Institute of Sociology of Collegium Civitas, Warsaw, Poland, and he studied also in Poland and UK and other countries, and he has published widely on subjects of racism, nationalism, populism, xenophobia, Holocaust distortions, and other issues, including several books. And since 1996, he is a co-founder of a Never Again Association. He's also a member of the International Association of Genocide Scholars. In 2018-2019, he was a visiting professor at the Center of European Studies of Chulalongkorn University, Bangkok, Thailand, and Buddhist Studies College in Ayutthaya, Thailand. In 2017, he was awarded the Polish Ombudsman Honorary Badge. He also received the Paul Award for his pedagogical, journalistic, and cultural activities for racial, ethnic, and religious tolerance, as well as for building civil society and democracy in Poland. I would like to invite Rafal to deliver his presentation. Rafal, you are unmuted.
I am sorry. I just said thank you, Natalia, for your kind introduction, and also big thanks to all the participants. I'm really happy that we have such a diversity of countries represented, countries of Southeast Asia and also beyond. And my special greetings to the students of Chulalongkorn University, which is a place that I miss a lot. So on behalf of the Never Again Association, Heinrich Bell Foundation Cambodia, International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, and our other partners, I really want to say that this first meeting in frames of the longer term initiative, I think we can already see it has been very, very inspiring. Let me go back to the question why. Why do we talk about the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz that took place in Poland in 1945? Why do we talk about this event in a non-European context, in the context of Southeast Asia, and what is actually its universal significance? Never Again has cooperated with partners, colleagues, friends in Southeast Asia for the last 4 years, and our initiative grew out organically from those discussions, consultations, conversations with civil society organizations, intellectuals, students, human rights activists in the region, including all the speakers of today's session, also many friends who are in the audience today, who expressed their strong interest in the subject. So once again, why? I believe that without understanding the legacy of the Holocaust, we cannot really understand some important foundations of the contemporary world. For example, the origin of the United Nations, the origin of the United Nations Convention Against Genocide, the thinking of Rafał Lemkin, a Polish Jewish lawyer who drafted the convention, in direct response to the horrors of World War II, and in particular the tragedy of the Holocaust. So these institutions, this convention, is definitely highly relevant today across the world, including in Southeast Asia, for example, in the context of violence against the Rohingya, as Nikki just described. Well, secondly, let's think about some other anniversaries this month. For example, on the 25th of January 1942, Thailand declared war on the United States and Great Britain, on the side of Japan and Nazi Germany. This is one example reminding us, this is one fact reminding us that World War II was a global war, and what happened in Europe was very strongly interconnected with what happened in Asia. And atrocities of World War II took place in Southeast Asia too. Now this picture, I think some of you will recognize the site. It is from Kanchanaburi, close to the Thai-Myanmar border, where tens of thousands of prisoners of war and Asian workers died during the construction of the infamous railway. Also in Kanchanaburi, one of the tragic massacres of the Chinese community by the Japanese army took place. And as we know, this is one of many tragic events in Southeast Asia during World War II. I believe it is a relatively little known aspect of the war and the history of the region, the plight of the Jewish population in Southeast Asia during World War II. Historically, the Jewish community was significant in Myanmar, but it existed in other countries too. And it was subjected to repressions, especially in Indonesia, by the Japanese occupiers. But we might also mention that anti-Semitic fascist propaganda was spread by the authorities, the colonial authorities of the Vichy government in France, in countries such as Cambodia, where a fascist youth organization was established during World War II with the support of the French authorities. But of course, the history of genocide in Southeast Asia is broader, and unfortunately, it does not stop with World War II. The genocide in Cambodia is one of the most tragic examples, and we already heard about the possible analogy with the history of of Cambodia. And of course, every instance of genocide is unique, is special. They are not the same. But it is important for us to understand that we can build our own empathy with the victims through relating to the history of our own country. In my case, the history of Poland. And it really struck me when I was in the Genocide Museum, the former extermination center in Phnom Penh, S21, when I came across the guest books, including some entries written very early on after the liberation of Phnom Penh. Some of those early entries were written by Polish visitors, Polish journalists, who immediately related the atrocities committed by the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia to the Polish history, the Polish experience, especially the experience of the Nazi occupation, Auschwitz, and the Holocaust. Now, of course, genocide is not just history. Next slide, please. And as we heard today, the Rohingya issue is one major example of that. So when we commemorate victims of past genocides, it is necessary and important for us to raise awareness about contemporary events, atrocities, and also to show meaningful solidarity with the victims of the contemporary instances of violence and genocide. Next, please. So there are important commonalities in our histories, identities, experiences. We cannot divide history into separate histories of nation states or continents. There is one history of humanity, and the Holocaust is an important part of it, as a point of reference in the struggle for moral progress and social progress. And the denial or distortion of genocide is one of the biggest obstacles to such progress. Trivialization, minimalization, shifting the blame to the victims, minorities such as Jews, that is a pattern that has been repeated. We know it so well, and it has to be confronted. And this meeting is just the first of activities that we plan to co-organize in partnership with our friends in Southeast Asia. The pandemic means that we have to revise some of the plans, but nevertheless, I am really very happy that this meeting today is the start of the cooperation. And we invite all of you to take part in it, to share your thoughts and ideas, to stay in touch with Never Again. We look forward to future cooperation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rafal, for your comprehensive overview. You raised so many points and to some extent also summarized previous presentations. So thank you also for introducing the project to all of us. So now I would like to invite our speakers, not only speakers but also our participants to reflect on our presentations, to share your feelings and also probably ask questions. I know that we are all from all parts of a region, but also of the world. So from Myanmar, from Thailand, from Australia, from the United States, from Poland, from Norway. From from people of very diverse backgrounds and experiences. So I would like to invite you to start the discussion. If you'd like to ask a question, just raise your hand so I can see that someone would like to ask something, or write in our chat box, please. Yes, Anna, please.
Thank you, Natalia. I have a question to Sayana Sar. I would like to ask you, what was the most difficult for you when you were translating the diary of Anna Frank, to translate this one particular culture to another, one language to another, but also you were translating the text written by the teenager girl during the Holocaust, and the readers were people who experienced genocide themselves. So what was the most difficult?
Thank you, Anna. I like to answer. I remember that the most difficult part for me was at the time I translate from English into Khmer language, and also because there are different time of translation from that English into Khmer, especially in the term of the war and the genocide in the book. But it's easier for the language of a teenage. At that time, I was a similar age to Anne Frank and was writing the diary. But also the most difficult part that I cannot hold my tear when reading and translating the book is when she lived in hiding in Amsterdam in the office. Like because I experienced similar when I was young, during the late 80s or 90s, the Khmer guerrilla have been bombarding the outskirts of the city of Phnom Penh, and my parents have to dig a hole under the house, so that we will go into hiding under the house in that trench. And the neighbor were asking to join in hiding with us as well, because the Khmer guerrilla is still fighting with the government at that time. And it was the same similar experience, because there is one night, I remember not one night, but most of the night that I was asleep, like deeply in the sleep, and this gunfighting, it's really wake up, and like my heart beat very, very fast. We were scared, we were frightened. So my mother have to bring us to under the house to hiding. And so when I translate Anne Frank, I remember the time too. I imagine how difficult it is when she hear the bombing. There's no food. There's difficulty not be able to go to school. I was stay in the house and didn't go to school for a week or several days as well. Like we have to be home at 5 and we eat early. We eat early in the afternoon, like 5:30, and then we prepare to go to bed at 6 o'clock. Even I was born after the Khmer Rouge, but we experienced that during the late 1980s, like 89 to 1991 as well. And so it's very difficult. It's not really the translation, but it's the situation, the experience that we face.
Thank you very much, Sayana. Thank you for sharing this. And I believe that there are some other questions also now and comments. Maybe my colleague Sanjoy Barwao.
Yes. Yeah, there's a question from Rafal Pankowski. But before the question, I really like to thanks to everyone, all the speakers, more specifically like Jeremy. He has a very moving, and Sayana as well, and Venerable Laplu he shared his experience. And also I like to appreciate Nikki. It's what a brave. It's a very strong statement. So the question from Rafal Pankowski to Nikki Diamond: can you say something about the Jewish community in Myanmar?
Yeah, we do have a Jewish community in Yangon, but not a lot of people member of the community. But we have a very a few. So I know a few of them who are member of the community. And yeah, I'm sorry to say that I only know a few of them, but not really engaging. And I mean, within my capacity, not really engaging with them. But I have met them some of the interfaith event or yeah, some sort of event. I usually have seen them. But I believe in the future, interfaith, I mean, a kind of solidarity among civil society and different community against the perpetrator. So it is really important right now. So most of a kind of popular and most well-known in Myanmar, everybody dislike Rohingya, and the government and military never support for the Rohingya people and on the issue of accountability and justice. But after the International Human Rights Organization Right to Investigate Journalism revealed what had happened to Rohingya, like Indian massacre and Guradin massacre. So right now, people in Myanmar, not all of them, but some people start realizing what had happened to Rohingya, and now civil society showing their kinds of recognition and solidarity of the Rohingya community in Myanmar. So that's, I think it is really a good start, and it will, yeah, we need to nurture and support those conversations. So recently, Rohingya and Rakhine community put out the declaration together. So in solidarity to, in the past, Rakhine community never experienced a human rights violation, but you may be familiar with the name AA Arakan Army, who is the fighting against the military and the government for their autonomy. So when they start engaging their autonomy, fight for autonomy in Rakhine, and Rakhine civilian also, non-Rohingya also experience the human rights violation perpetrated by the military. So now they see that in the country, like, so whenever we talk about human rights violation, the military is the significant perpetrator against all other ethnic minority as well.
Thank you, Nikki. And my next question for Jeremy Jones. From your travel in Southeast Asia, is the legacy of Jewish communities present in the region? Hi, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. It's an interesting question because the Jewish communities were always very small. They existed in many different places, as has been discussed, and they had particular experiences under the Japanese occupation because of the Japanese relationship with the Nazis. Look, for example, Singapore is a story which has its own history. Dr. Pankowski referred earlier to the Indonesian experience, and there were other experiences. And you go to some places and you find the remnants, the remains, a bit of history. In Surabaya in Indonesia, the names of some of the streets, in other parts of Southeast Asia also. But what you see more of now is a presence or an interest of contemporary Jewish people. Jewish people today seem to have learned something from experiences during the Holocaust. They've learned about how evil racism is, regardless of whom it's targeting. And so many people working in the NGO world, many people working in the human rights world will encounter Jews today in Southeast Asia, even though they're not Jewish communities within Southeast Asia. But we live in such a globalized, have such a globalized existence now. I mean, look at this seminar today. We are from all parts of the world having a conversation. And you can relate and learn from somebody whether they are 3 meters away from you or 30,000 kilometers away from you. You have that opportunity to engage and learn. And although, yes, there are Jewish communities and there are still small numbers of Jews in a number of places within Southeast Asia, the real relevance, I think, of Jews to Southeast Asia today are the Jewish people wherever we are and whoever we are, who are able to engage and work with community builders, social justice workers, etc. in Asia.
Thank you, Jeremy. Yes, yes, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah, can I have a question, please?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for giving me this chance to ask a question. First, I would like to express that I'm very glad to be here because I had a lot of different history about Holocaust and about the Cambodian. And so I'm from Myanmar. My name is Zawin. I'm also currently a master's student in human rights in Mahidol University in Thailand. So yeah, it is very important to commemorate about the events like genocide events around the world. So it has been more than 70 years after Second World War. So it is very important to acknowledge to what had happened to the victims of Holocaust and other genocide events around the world. So I think all these atrocities and mass murder and then mass killing of peoples are mostly committed by the state authorities, the state authorities like military and the government. So those are not the normal people like armed group people or something like ethnic fighter or not like robbers. So mostly the perpetrators are the state authorities in all events. We have witnessed that. So what is important from my point of view is that what is important is how to prevent. Yeah, of course, it is very important to acknowledge what has happened to the victims. But at the same time, it is also very important to think about how to prevent in the future, because it has been almost more than how many years? More than 70 years now after Holocaust during World War II. Still, this kind of events are happening in different parts of the world. So we are very fortunate that we have a chance to commemorate the Holocaust event today, but there are still group of people who cannot commemorate their events, therefore their loved ones. Like in Indonesia, there are a lot of communist members were killed during 1970s in Indonesia. So this Chinese community cannot express their feeling about their loved ones. So, and I think it is very important to think about for the future to prevent this kind of things, because I think we fail to prevent. So if we are not serious in this time on this day, maybe tomorrow another genocide will happen. Although of course there's one participant, one speaker explained about the genocide convention. Yes, of course there were genocide convention in the UN system, but it didn't work. That's why several genocide events took place in different parts of the world. So I think at the same time, we are very glad that we have an organization like Never Again. So my question is that the Never Again as a Never Again association, what kind of activities you are doing currently, engaging with United Nations, because it's not enough. United Nations preventive measure is not enough. Even now, Rohingya people are still struggling to be recognized of what had happened to them. It's very far away from the justice. It is very far away to get back what they deserve. Even their suffering have been in contemplation. So as an organization, Never Again as an organization, so what kind of things, what kind of activities you are engaging with United Nations and other kinds of powerful countries like USA and UK to prevent this kind of things? Because all the genocide events were taken place under the watch of international communities like United Nations, like UK, and also UN. So I think we need to be more serious to prevent such kind of barbaric attack on the civilian. So as an organization, Never Again, because Never Again, we already witnessed that again and again, this kind of event in Cambodia, in Srebrenica. So it is very important for the survivors to get the justice. For example, in Srebrenica, the survivor of the genocide is still seeing out in the outside world they are perpetrators, they are rapists. So I think we as a human being, I think we are not doing enough to prevent this kind of things in the future. We are not doing enough to bring justice for the survivors of genocide. So as I would like to, my question is that, as a Never Again Association, what kind of major bold activities that you are engaging with United Nations and other powerful country like USA, because they can make a changes. Okay. Because all the perpetrators are the state-related institution, like military, like state authorities. So if it is possible, I would like to hear about your major activities that you are doing around the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think Rafal will respond. Yes, please.
I will try to respond. I agree with you that not enough, by far not enough, has been done and is not being done. But everybody has a role to play. Everybody can do something. We must not be indifferent, as Marian Turski, our friend, a very esteemed Holocaust survivor, former prisoner of Auschwitz, said, one must not be indifferent. That is the bottom line. And everybody could and should do something. And the Never Again Association is also trying to do as much as we can, but we cannot do everything, certainly not without your help and participation. But when you asked about the United Nations, normally we do not work on that level, but I personally was invited to address the UN Human Rights Council 2 years ago. And I was asked to talk about Poland and Polish experiences, but I also mentioned the Rohingya issue, because I thought it was also my obligation to mention the contemporary case of genocidal violence. But I also agree with you that prevention is key, and of course it is easier said than done. But in this context, education is very important. But when we talk about education, from the experiences of the Never Again Association, it is not just what happens within the school or within the university. It is also what happens outside of it, what happens on the internet, in social media, what happens in the sports stadium, what happens in streets, in music concerts, etc. So we have built our educational campaigns in the field of informal education. So using music festivals, using sports. One of our main campaigns is called "Let's Kick Racism Out of the Stadiums," and this is the kind of experience that we are more than happy to share. We also want to learn from other countries, from other partners. But last year, or in 2019, I had the pleasure to conduct a workshop at Chulalongkorn University, a workshop on the experiences of the Never Again Association in anti-racism, anti-xenophobia, awareness raising through the tools of informal education, such as music and sports. And I would very much encourage you and everybody to have a look on our website, neveragain.org, or our Facebook page under the title Respect Diversity or Never Again Association. And I do hope that you may find something inspirational there. And if you also have some ideas or examples of good practice that we could learn from, we would be very grateful too. So thank you again for your contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafal. And I would like to ask Sanjoy Barua, our moderator, chat moderator, to tell us if someone else would like to ask a question or has a comment.
Okay, so yeah, thanks, Rafal, as well, and also Natalia too. Actually, I also agree with Rafal that never again association can't be covered everything. But it's since I have been observing that, you know, I just like to add something with in response to Joe, that from since 2018 with Rafal and the Never Again Association. So I really appreciate the way you do the hate speech and anti-hate speech. So like still now in the world, still going on in different parts of the world, and the Holocaust event was a very sad event in the 70 years ago. And you know, so since the last few centuries, there are so many genocides in different parts of the world. But the message is clear that hatred is indeed never appeased by hatred in this world. So it is appeased only by loving kindness and compassion. So as much as we can be, you know, just produce that more like non-violence, non-hatred, or no more hate speech. So it can be maybe that it can be a good practice that we can bring it back to the world. Maybe the world can be much peaceful. Maybe this is the one way like we can be practiced in this memorial days, and we hope that it will never be happen again. So my next one question that for Nikki, I guess, yeah.
I'm sorry. I think Sanjoy. I think Jeremy had some comments also.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry, Edwin, we can have other questions. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If I may, I just wanted to also applaud the work of the Never Again Foundation, but relate a short anecdote. Some years ago, I was at an international intergovernmental conference on the prevention of genocide. There were delegates from very well-meaning governments, some high-level people. When we arrived, we were told we could not talk about any contemporary genocides because of the diplomacy. We couldn't talk about something that was happening at the time, and the main fear was one of the countries was involved in an activity which was branded by many as genocide, and they didn't want to be spoken about. That was the governments, but there were the people, the human beings from NGOs, the individuals who were saying, we feel the most important thing is a vision of what sort of world it is in which we want to live in the future. What is our vision? And if we have a vision which says there is no genocide, then we have to say, how do we work towards that vision? And sometimes it's not going to be governments who are going to be lighting the flame and who are going to be holding the torch and leading the way. It's going to be individuals building coalitions with people who have a good world as their vision. And now one of the beauties of the world in which we live is the opportunity to connect internationally. Even if you might feel you're the only person in your region who is standing for a value you think is important, you can find others around the world, give them support, receive support. And the work of Never Again Foundation, look at the idea of fighting racism in sport. It's something that is now catching on. It's a flame, which is almost like we don't like bushfires in Australia, but we do like something positive. We do like the fact that there is something going now where people are saying sporting places cannot accept racists in the fans, in the stands, or racists on the field. Music festivals. How wonderful to have people who think that their culture is against racism. They, if they are a decent human being, will not only be opposed to genocide, but consciously thinking, how can we do something to prevent it happening? How can we help people who are going through a terrible situation? So yes, the speaker's comments about state actors as being very difficult when they're not the perpetrators, they don't seem to be very good at being part of the solution. They will only be part of the solution if groups like Never Again Foundation are able to be, and others are able to generate people, population saying, our vision for the world does not include racism.
Thank you, Jeremy. It's a very powerful message. So, Venerable Laplu, would like to add something? Would you like to say something?
Thank you so much, everyone. Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, to join with us. Actually, I think there's genocide is not just only for killing by one of the generation or some things. And genocide all the times start from our heart, from our mind, and from our hatred speech or from our delusions. So I agree with our most professors, Rafals. We must have to make awareness from ourselves. When we have an awareness from ourselves, when we have a real compassion in our heart, and we can accept as never again do that, when we can accept to our respect to others, all the diversity, then we can accept all the peoples, regardless of religious, regard of colors, and regards of asset. Because genocide is not only for the religious things, it's not happened by the religious. It's happened for the property, it's happened for the economical value, it's happened for the economy. It's related with the many things, I think. So that's why genocide and Holocaust, we must have to make from our heart. That's why in our Buddha said, we must have to think as like a mother protects her child. So we have to think ourselves, we have to protect all human beings as like mothers protect to our child. So this is maybe we can develop and we can make people to more awareness and make people to respect themselves. When we have a respect our own respect to our mind and body, when we have a respect to our speech, our thinking, our thought, then we can respect to other things and other thought and other what. So must is coming to know ourselves. And we make, because who do the politics, someone asking the questions, Joe Wing asked this is coming from the politician or this is come from the other side. I think politician is also weird because we became a politician members, we became a parliament members and we make the decisions. So this is came from our side. So I believe that, so that's why we must individually, we have to our own responsibility and make compassion, kindness, and equanimity in our heart. Then it will be, we can progress. So that's why most important, develop your own and inner peace. Then it will be, make you outer peace and positive peace in the world. And we can stop genocide and Holocaust and no more, everyone will be happy and will be make a peaceful world from our side. So thank you so much again. And I wish everyone at this pandemic times, you will be peacefully minds and you will be take a positive energy from knowing yourself, knowing your breathings. Because if we don't have our breathing, that means nothings. We have to die. So we must have to think fast our breathings. When we have a breathing, that means we are still alive and we have to make a better world for the next generation or for the future generation and positive world. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Venerable Laplu. We have one more question, last question probably. From this question go to the Nikki. From Piu Min Kent, one of our participants, she mentioned that in Myanmar, well-known figures are publicly promoting hate speech and encouraging people to do so. Social media plays an important role in this, and the state shows no sign of taking actions. They even protected the war criminals at ICJ. Their propaganda is also affecting youths, and this is very dangerous for our future and human rights. what can we do to reduce hatred among youths? So this
That's the excellent question, and I've been working on the issue for so many years, since 2012. So hatred and hate speech against Muslim and Rohingya community is very common, and also is being seen on the social media frequently. So hatred doesn't alone turn into a violence. Hatred with the fear, a kind of phobic fear, turn into the most dangerous and most violent. So I've seen not enough state action against combating hate speech in Myanmar. So I also don't support the criminalizing hate speech, because in Myanmar, every human rights defender facing the situation like oppressive law targeting the human rights defender and so if we criminalize, if the parliament enacted the law criminalizing hate speech, that law can be used as a tool to oppress the human rights defender. But one will around combating hate speech, I've seen enough civil society groups who are working enough on combating hate speech. So civil society initiatives is really strong. Yeah, I do agree with you, this is not enough, but doing something is better than doing nothing. So we also need a kind of support and other experience sharing. Like some of the speakers already mentioned about genocide, not always happen with the violence. So it's always happen in the people mind, people discrimination, prejudice, some kinds of fear against a particular community or particular group, hatred. All these are, a kinds of precondition. So we need to analyze the situation. So for the medical doctor, to have a cure or treatment, we need to diagnose the issue of the So in Myanmar, one of the situations is we don't have enough diagnosis, and so a lot of issue with the hate speech and other discrimination. So state also have a very discriminated policy against Rohingya Muslim and also other minority, religious minority. So all these issues exist, and also so that's the indicated light that we need really work hard, but at the same time, it's not enough. And also domestically, we are doing a lot of things, but also we need to engage with the international community. So for the far right, on behalf of members of the far right, we do investigate, we do a kind of diagnosis, and also we engage with the people in power, people who have a position in the government or UN or other foreign government. So who can bring the changes or who can make it happen? And also we have strengthening programs like, so whoever in need of our assistance in Myanmar, civil society or victim community, or we try to provide assistance for these people as well. So this is our philosophy of change, like investigate, engage, and strengthen. So in this world, we do something, and it is not enough, but we have seen some kinds of impact on the ground level. I do agree with you, and I can only tell you is we need, more people, working together, and then one day we can combat all these issues.
Thank you very much, Nikki, for your answer, for your response. So, and I think we already it's already 11 in Poland. So I'd like maybe to ask our speakers to say some last words. What will be your words to the future generations? Just some seconds, some sentences. If you have something to share. Sayana, Rafal, Jeremy, Nikki.
I'm willing to speak. And that's something that sometimes we forget when we're using terms like genocide, racism, persecution. We forget we're talking about human beings. Every person every number when we talk about tens of thousands, hundreds, millions, whatever the number. We're talking about individual human beings who are being robbed or have been robbed of the basic right just to have aspirations for personal happiness, fulfillment, for anything they want to do in life. And as the Venerable said not long ago, we have to think of every other human being as somebody who is like our own brother, our own child, our own parent. As soon as we think of other human beings that way, I think we have a more powerful impetus to try and do whatever we can to protect them and help them.
Thank you, Jeremy. Sayana, would you like to say something?
Yes, I like to, my comment will be an additional to Dr. Rafal's speech as well. Like, I agree with him about the education is very important, but how do we create, how do we educate? Especially it's not only the student, and as the example, we need to collaborate together, not only in Europe or Southeast Asia, but from different institutions, from different field. For example, even the policemen, the community, the case of in Cambodia, we do work, reach out to the different, like, let's say different audience or different focus. My term will be more like inappropriate if I use like the word outreach to be like a marketing. Why we use the word marketing is so very successful, like attract people to learn about it. So the outreach is, we should think about it, how to educate the principle, how to say, the program, the methodology to introduce of this kind of education, to make to invest in it, so that people willing to learn. And the program, what we should add in the program, like the Venerable Lablu, he mentioned that should be in with religion of the compassion, the kindness, should be included in that. Also ethic, morality, it's very important. And not only for the student, especially with the policy maker, the lawmaker, the especially policemen as well, like I said, and also the commune chief in my country. They are the leader, the community leader. They need to aware about it as well, and to collaborate into taking action about this. So I think we focus more on investing in education, but on how, and also to review about our methodology in the way how we impose the teaching. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sayana. Yes, education is very important, and I think we need to cooperate more to elaborate it. And Rafal, would you like to respond, or just very quickly, briefly?
Just very briefly, I would like to say that the phrase "never again" has been repeated many times today, and I think it is important. It is important to preserve the memory. It is important to combat Holocaust denial and distortion, denial of genocide. But there is also a positive phrase that I would like to mention here. That is simple: respect diversity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rafal. And unfortunately, we don't have time. And I would like to thank all our participants today, our speakers, and let's be in touch. And let's cooperate. And please write to us if you are interested to participate in our project, to contribute to our project in the future. We will share now our contact details in chat, so please be in touch, and we will of course also update you about our activities. And I would like just to end our session by powerful words of Marian Turski, the survivor of Auschwitz-Birkenau, who said these words last year at the 75th anniversary of liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. The Nazi camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau didn't drop from the sky. It was all teeny steps approaching until what happened here behind me did happen. Don't be indifferent when any power or government infringes on extant social rights, and don't be indifferent. Otherwise, you won't even notice when you and your heirs suddenly see and Auschwitz falling down from the sky, straight on them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone.